So I'm sure you've heard of the whole MTHFR thing. People are talking more and more about it, which is fantastic. But I thought I'd do a little video on briefly what is it and why do we need to be thinking about it, and why is it something that would be useful to get tested, or at least try using proper supplements to see if it makes any difference for you. I also think if we increase the awareness for dietitians out there, because not once have I been told in my course about this, and you know, dietitians are very much about pushing the whole fortified foods, and I think it's certainly a thing that we need to be considering, because it could lead to some severe health issues. First of all, what are people talking about when they say MTHFR? So MTHFR is a certain enzyme that we have in our body, and it's really important because essentially what we're doing is we take folate in from our food and we're able to then convert it into active folate. And I'm not going to go through all the lists of why we need folate, but we all know about folate being necessary, especially in pregnancy. That's why they often get you on a folate supplement when you're pregnant or when you're about to become pregnant. And I think this is a really important video for this, because I'll go into why we need to be considering whether or not your folate is activated, especially when you're trying to get pregnant. But also just in general, there are a lot of things in the body that require folate. One really obvious one is red blood cell production. So a big issue if you're not able to have activated folate in your body, and for it to do its job, if you have a deficiency, you won't be able to properly make your red blood cells. They won't mature properly and you'll end up with anemia. There's a number of other things, so if you're interested in that, let me know and I can do another video on that. If somebody's not able to actually utilize their folate in their body, they will essentially be experiencing mainly fatigue, brain fog, anything that's to do with energy production, because we know we need red blood cells to be functioning properly to have enough energy. There are a lot of other things that can go on as well, so as I said, I can do a video on that, but the main symptom of deficiency is going to be issues with energy production. So just getting back to the conversion, so essentially, as I said, we'll bring in the folate in our diet or via fortified foods. And I'm going to put a little picture here so I can be going through it and describe it. And then from there in the body, that is when we actually activate it. So we're going to essentially put on a methyl group, which is just essentially a CH3. And that will activate the folate. We also need B12 in this step as well, because B12 is the nutrient that's going to pass over the methyl group. And so this is a cycling process. So what's interesting is that when people talk about the whole MTHFR gene mutation, it's basically what they're talking about is a person has a slight mutation in the gene that codes for an enzyme, which is the MTHFR. So the gene is MTHF and the enzyme is MTHFR because it's a reductase enzyme. And so that's going to put that methyl group onto the folate and make it active. Now, as I said, if somebody has a mutation in this gene and they can't produce the enzyme that they need to do this, then their functioning is going to be slightly lower. It doesn't always make the enzyme not work. Well, when I say it doesn't always, it actually never makes the enzyme not work at all, because if that was the case, you'd be dead. You wouldn't be an adult. But it will just make it not function as much as it should. So if you have a certain mutation, it's going to make it function, say, 50%. If you have another mutation, it can make it function 70%. So it's just going to depend on what mutation you have in that gene as to how much that enzyme functions. So for example, let's say somebody has only 50% functioning of that enzyme, then they're going to need a bit more supplementation of the active folate. So let's look at the average intake of folate just very quickly. So let's say that you're the average person and you're going to be getting your folate from your food. You're also probably getting some folate from fortified foods, which are like grains and cereals and things like that. Let's just not talk about the supplements for a moment. So you're the average person that's just getting folate from your diet and from fortified foods. So firstly, let's talk about diet. So if you were to get the folate from your diet, so that'd be in like beef, pork liver, I believe it's quite high in leafy greens, things like that. So you're going to get it in via your diet, and it's going to go into your bloodstream and your liver, and it's going to be converted in from the tetrahydrofolate to the 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. So that's where you need that MTHFR gene working properly, because if that gene is mutated, you can't do that conversion and make that 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, which is the one that we need in order to do all the jobs throughout the body. And you can kind of tell this on blood work. A really good marker for this is like if you look at your bloods and you've got really high homocysteine. Homocysteine is created in these in this pathway essentially. So I'll go through this in a different video because it'll bore you. But essentially, if your homocysteine levels are really high, this is often an indicator that you're not able to properly methylate for whatever reason. This can actually be either via, let's say you've got a mutation in the genes that do the conversion, or maybe you have really low B12 levels. Maybe you're not getting enough B12, and B12 is essentially the vitamin that's going to hand over the methyl group and make it active. But what I also want to point out here is if you look at this conversion, if you were to get the folate from fortified foods, which is actually, according to studies, this is where majority of the average population gets their folate from, which is really scary, and I'll just explain this now. If you're getting it from the fortified foods, you're actually getting a form of folate which is called folic acid. So like food, will bring that folic acid in via, let's say you're eating bread. You bring that folic acid in and you actually require another enzyme called DHFR. So that's dehydrotetrafolate. Look at me, I can't talk. But what's really interesting, and what a lot of people don't know, they often talk about the MTHFR gene mutation, but you can actually have a mutation in the DHF as well. So that means that if you were relying solely on the folic acid from fortified foods and you have this gene mutation, you're not going to be actually able to get to the next step, and therefore you're not going to be able to ever be able to make the activated folate because you have a gene mutation there. And I think this is really interesting to point out, because let's say you're the average female who gets told you need to be eating more fortified foods when you're thinking of getting pregnant, or you are pregnant, or you put on a standard supplement that has folic acid in it. You're relying on the folic acid to be converted in your body to the active form. But what if you have a gene mutation, which is surprisingly common? Then you're not going to be able to do this. And you might see this via like having a high level of folic acid in your bloodstream. And this is a problem because not only are you not actually getting the activated version of folate, so it's not able to do its jobs throughout the body, especially in pregnancy, this is a problem. You might be feeling fatigued, you might be getting anemia, and a whole list of other symptoms. And you're just peeing it out, essentially. You're peeing out a lot of this B vitamin that your body actually needs. You're wasting money. But there have actually been some studies coming out as well that are kind of showing that there could be some relationship between some health conditions, like for example autism, with having high levels of just folic acid floating around in the bloodstream that is building up and can't get converted. I think this is a really, really interesting thing. If I've lost you, I'm sorry. If I haven't, well done. What I'm trying to get at is that in the body, we need to be able to convert what we consume, the folate that we consume, whether it's the folate in the food or the folic acid that we're getting in fortified foods or supplements. We need to make sure that our body is able to activate it. And if you're getting funky symptoms, and these can be quite systemic as well. So if you're getting any funky symptoms that aren't resolving, lots of energy issues, things like that, it could be worthwhile getting your genes tested, because, and you can do that these days, and you can test whether or not your enzymes that are doing the conversions in your body of that folate are functional. Let's say you come back with a mutation, then you know that you need to take a supplement that is already methylated. So the folate and the B12 that you're getting is already methylated, which means it's already in its active form. So therefore your body doesn't have to do it. And it takes off a lot of the stressor of your body trying to do it itself. It won't get built up in the bloodstream. You won't be wasting money essentially. But gene testing does cost a lot. So what I would say is that there doesn't seem to be any issue from what I can see in the literature with people if they are assuming that maybe they do have a problem with methylation, trying a B vitamin supplement that is already methylated. So what are you going to be looking for in your supplement? You are going to be looking for, in the B12, you want it to be methylcobalamin. You do not want the cyanocobalamin because that's the one that is not methylated and it's not activated. In the folate, you want the ingredients to say 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. You don't want folic acid because, as I said, if you do have this mutation, you won't be able to do the conversion and you'll just get a buildup of the unactivated folate in your body, or the B12 if it's an issue with that system. So if you want more information on this, let me know. If you're suspicious that you might have it, let me know. I can help you with testing if you want, or I can help you figure out the symptoms. You can go to my website, at biochemnikki.com. Yeah. Well done if you've stuck with me throughout this whole video.